Hey, appreciate you, Brennan. One day at Chickasha. Yeah, we got to get that. That almost rhymes. We can make a T-shirt. One day at Chickasha. That almost warns every coach that's on here. Don't go there, Coach Cobble, or something. One day at Chickasha. One of the action items that we had last week was sharing your story, and I went on Twitter and went to our hashtag FCA Timeout. I want to share with some of those with you today because I really think it's important that as peers, we get to hear from each other. And so I'm going to read some of those. Coach Lujan, he said, why do I coach? I coach because I am passionate about competition and the game of football. I have been blessed with an amazing platform to teach young men how to be better husbands, fathers, and leaders in their communities, and more importantly, to share my faith. That's Coach Lujan. Coach Lee Blankenship, why do I coach? I coach because I love to compete. I coach because of my family. I coach to make an impact on our kids and our community. I coach because I have been called to coach. And I think that's all of us. Matthew 28:18-20, and Coach Lee Blankenship. Sean Meek, he put down here, as coaches, we need to use ball to win kids, not use kids to win ball games. Wow, that's powerful stuff. That's what Coach said last week. Let's go down here. Coach Jensen, OBU, he says, my mission is to help people consistently choose disciplined behaviors that build body, mind, and spirit through the pursuit of victory on the football field. Coach Ginn said, why do I coach? I coach to have an impact on young lives. There were great men that had an impact on my life, and because of how these coaches coached and cared for me, I coach to help kids better their one shot at it. It's about caring for them first and foremost. Coach Wesley, OKFCA, asked me to post, why do I coach? He made sure everyone knew who asked him, so appreciate that. Long, boring story, but blessed to become a coach, teacher as a second career, simply by responding to a tweet by Coach Blankenship, who hired me and gave me a chance to give back and try to positively influence a few kids per year. Coach, I want to tell you that you're influencing a lot more than a few, and this is something that I'm thankful that all you coaches that responded to our challenge last week to get back in the game. But all you new people out here, this is Timeout, and the purpose of Timeout is because Oklahoma staff and FCA designed this time to really help you navigate through sports and life. During the conversations that we have with the coaches that come on our calls and the FCA staff that we have here from Oklahoma, we hope to lead you on a journey of transformation with vision and accountability to your team and family. And our ultimate prayer is that you will be encouraged and challenged during this time out. You know, we talk about it every week, and I'm going to continue saying these things until it gets stamped on our forehead, kind of like what we want to do with our kids. We want to make sure they know the direction and what we're trying to accomplish. So I want to share these simple truths of what a timeout is and how we're going to build up to our segments. But they're timeouts, obviously, we all know that are key in any athletic competition. And they bring advantages to team, and also sometimes they bring disadvantages that we may talk about. On the outside, it may be a disadvantage, but on the internal and the inside, it's a great advantage to us. So catch your breath, stop the momentum of an opponent, hydrate, and get treatment. I don't like getting treatment, but we all got to hydrate most times in the game. Evaluate our game so far, gain instruction and encouragement, and get back in the game and take the field. That's what we all love to do, is getting back in the game and taking the fields. But today is a special day. We talked a lot last week about, you know, Coach's shirt and his hat and times where the unexpected timeout happens in our life. And, you know, the introduction to this topic is really a timeout that none of us like to face. Some of us have faced it, whether you've been cut on a football team or a basketball or a sports team in general, have been fired from your job or whatever. Those unexpected timeouts sometimes can seem tough on the outside, but really bring joy on the inside after they're over. So Coach, I want to welcome you. And we talked about last week, why, and you got motivated to start coaching and why you coach. And we discussed, times where in coaching that were tough, but they also went back to where it all started whenever you seen in your living room and people would come in and talk to your dad, and that inspired you. But Coach, I want you to take us on a journey in a time in your life when an unexpected timeout happened.
We didn't, we didn't prepare very well for the downtime. As a young coach, I did used to be young, by the way, but as a young coach, I used to hear the old guys say all the time, it's one of those deals where you've either been fired or you're going to be fired. Well, I'm like, okay, yeah, but not me. I mean, seriously, I'm good at what I do. I was confident, man. We're having success. I get an incredible blessing to move from a job that I was loving into the college ranks, and got to spend 4 years as an assistant coach to Todd Graham at the University of Tulsa, my alma mater, the place that invested in me, the place I loved probably more than any other school. And in an amazing thing, how God does things, Coach Graham left, and I was really an outside shot. And I wound up getting named the head football coach at my alma mater, my school at the University of Tulsa. And man, I couldn't have been prouder. I was, this was family. I was I was home. We actually had really good success the first 2 years. Probably almost unprecedented success, won 11 games, the conference championship, the Liberty Bowl. It feels easy to me. I had some opportunities to at least to visit with folks about leaving and taking another job. And I'm like, dude, no, I'm where I'm supposed to be. I'm invested. I feel like I'm doing the right stuff. I feel like I'm trying my best, at least at the time, to honor the Lord with what I was doing. And man, for the next 2 years, we couldn't win a game. I mean, it just tanked. We were young. We have all kinds of excuses. We have all kinds of reasons. But the fact is, we just couldn't get it going for 2 years. Don't think I didn't pray about that. Don't think I didn't ask God to help us get some wins and to do it. And along the way, we changed athletic directors about 3 times. And so now I've got a new athletic director that has not been there since we won games. I think, he starts hearing some stuff in the community. And short version is, no matter what I had been told, and that's another story, no matter how I had bought into the company way of doing things at my place, at the end of the 2014 season, I got to meet with the president and AD, and they gave me my walking papers and told me, thank you, your services are no longer needed. I was crushed, man. I mean, I thought this was not just a job. This was a calling. This was something I was committed to. And Kenyatta, I'm telling you, it gutted me. And then I had to watch the reality of, head coaches, we get paid. I wasn't getting paid like my predecessor, and I wasn't getting paid like the guy that came after me, but I still was making a lot more money than I'd ever made in my life. But I had to watch as 20 families or more got unemployed because I got fired. All of my assistant coaches, all of the staff, all of, one by one. I mean, and I'm just like, how much of a failure do I feel like that I couldn't keep them employed? And so, I struggled through some of that. I was thankful that some other people reached out to me, but dude, I had a lot of questions. I had a lot of questions for God. I had a lot of questions for myself. I didn't think I put my validation and my, I didn't think I did that with my job, but I couldn't quit going there. I couldn't quit going that, these people think I'm a failure, and I got cheated, and I got mistreated, and I got this, and I got that, and it shouldn't have happened. And people that love you, we tell our kids this all the time. People that love us and care about us, they contribute to that. They don't mean to, but they're feeding you. Man, that shouldn't have happened. I can't believe that. This is bad. This is, and we see that in coaching all the time. It took me a while, but I immediately decided I'm getting out of town. And, you know, you got a little contract payout, and so I'm going to do this. But I went on what I call a sabbatical tour. I started visiting other colleges. I had friends in the profession. And so, man, over the spring, I hit like 12 different schools, got to stay for a couple of days, and I'd watch them on the field. I'd watch them in the classroom, just trying to learn. You know, two things happened, Kenyatta. I began to evaluate me of where, you know, could I have done better? What do I need to deal with? And then the other thing is I got ideas of how to be better. You know, I got ideas from getting around folks. I talked to a whole bunch of college coaches over the time that had eventually been fired, and we could commiserate with each other, you know, and do all that. But the reality was, over and over again, I would hear guys say, you know, if I'd have just known how much I could learn during my sabbatical, I think I would have talked myself into taking a year off. Well, ain't a coach around that none of us are going to do that, where we just take a year off to get better. And the reality is, though, nearly everybody I've talked to that got forced into that sabbatical found a way to get themselves either personally better or better in the job that we were doing, how we were dealing with kids, how we were doing with all those things. So all of that began to play into me. But Kenyatta, I was still facing some other issues, though.
Man, Coach, I appreciate you sharing that and being open and honest. And this is where we're going to go into our evaluation segment where, you know, during this part of the timeout, we got to discuss where we are today and how we're going to get better as coaches. And we want you to share some of that wisdom. So during your sabbatical, or what you learned from your sabbatical during that time, Coach, right after you got fired and was talking to all these coaches and had some time off and extra cash that you didn't have to work for, that you already worked for. But,
Right.
you know, during that time of travel, how can you apply some of those principles now where every day you're building your program? And so is there something that you can do that's kind of like a sabbatical to refresh while you're on the job?
Well, I do. I think that the thing is learning to get past yourself. And that was what's hard. You know, I'd been a head coach at that time at the high school level, 22 years. I've been a college head coach for 4. I've been an assistant for, man, between me and working for 4 years for Todd Graham, that's the only people that had ever led the programs that I was part of. And I had unprecedented success of, I shouldn't say unprecedented. I had a lot of success, but I will tell you, I was stuck on how I did things or how Coach Graham did things because that was all I'd ever experienced. And so getting my eyes open to, you know, there's some other dudes out there that believe like I do that might have one thing that they could do a little bit better than what I was doing if I would just get them to ask. And you know, the thing about coaches, most of us want to tell. Most of us want to share. And so I began just picking brains and feeling like that, you know, and for me, it wasn't scheme. It wasn't X's and O's. It was more about how to reach these youngsters, how to inspire them, how to be better at how I explain things. And I think we're able to do that right now during this pandemic timeout.
Yeah, so true. And you touched on this a little bit, bitterness.
Yeah.
It creeps in. It can creep in whenever your job is going well. I mean, coaches have a lot of things they have to overcome just to do their job and what they love to do. And bitterness can creep in, Coach. And would you talk to us a little bit about if it did creep in or how you handle that during this time or any time in your coaching career?
Well, most of the time we begin to feel resentful or bitter when we feel like we've been mistreated, when we feel like that it hadn't been fair. There was a point in time, and I'm going to take you back 40 plus years, when I finished my college playing career. I got benched my senior year. I'd been the starting quarterback and got benched and replaced by a younger guy. And I held that in me, and I was mad at our head coach. I And over the next 3 years or so, I found myself, anytime that his name was mentioned, my gut would just get crazy. I just, man, he just, I don't know how to explain it, but I resented him. I had bitterness towards him. And thankfully, I got some people that shared with me some ideas about, man, this is going to eat you up. This is going to destroy you if you let resentment and bitterness take seat. And I began feeling it, man. I couldn't even be happy when I should be happy, because I just wanted him not to be happy. I heard a guy say one time, and I mentioned this before, but resentment and bitterness is a poison we take hoping the other person will die. See, it doesn't affect you that I resent you. It affects me. It affects me that I'm bitter. It doesn't affect you. And so I had to learn that, man, I had to deal with this. Matthew 5:44. And the guy told me when he was sharing this with me again 40 plus years ago, he said, dude, get your 44 out and blow this thing away. You got to blow away the bitterness. And this is how you do it. You got to love your enemy. Now, get out of the words of, what the whole point is, somebody's done something to you. You got to learn to love them. You got to bless them, and you got to do good for them, and you got to pray for them. Here's what I learned from me and Coach. Man, I didn't want to do it. And so through gritted, clenched teeth, I would say, God bless him. Well, just God bless him. Well, just God. And I'd start saying it enough that sooner than later, it began to soften my heart. And I began to pray for him. And I began to say, Lord, I pray that Coach has success. I pray. And even when I didn't mean it all the time, I began to do that. And then the example was, can you do good for them? Can you drop off a book or a piece of pie or something like that, whatever, do something good for the person. That man, that coach became one of my closest friends. But I had to go through that. Well, I'm giving you that short version to tell you that later on, that coach helped me get the union job. He spoke for me. I wonder what had happened if I had still resented and held that bitterness. Well, after I got fired, I found myself, man, I was PO'd, bro. I'm just telling you, it wasn't right. I'm just like, come on now. Yeah. I took duct tape and covered up every TU logo I had, and I was like, man, I ain't going there anymore. I'm done with that. And I felt a real need to not let bitterness get in me. And I wound up sending some letters to the president and the AD, and began trying to actively go about making sure that I had forgiveness in my heart and that I didn't hold anything against them. Even if they didn't do anything wrong, it was how I felt. And I'm telling you, I'm still working through that. Every day is not, kumbaya with me and my alma mater, but it's so much better than it used to be. And I just think we've got to understand that when things go bad for us, and again, it could be when we got cut, maybe fired, reassigned, our girlfriend dumped us, whatever it is, we got to figure out to get past it. I got two things to add to that now, Kenyatta, real quick. I prayed like crazy to get to stay at Tulsa. I wanted to stay at Tulsa, much like Jesus in the garden prayed for God to let that cup pass from him, but he said, nevertheless, your will. Mm-hmm. I look back, maybe God if he had left me at Tulsa, what would I have experienced? Since I left, I've got to be at 4 great places. I got to help out at Booker T. I got to be at Fayetteville for a year. I've been at Owasso for 3 seasons. We've won championships. We've had all kinds of things going on. It's changed my life. Well, which of those things would I have wanted to give up so I got my way and got to stay at Tulsa? The gifts that God has for us, if we'll just let him direct our path, are there. Proverbs 3:5-6 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. Don't try to figure it all out, but in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct our path. And it's not going to be what we thought it would be a lot of the time. One last thing, I always try to tease a little bit, but I'm wearing my sleeveless shirt, bro, which is not good for me. It's not a good look. Yeah, I got to break the guns out. Do you know, as crazy as I was, when I came to Owasso, we were about 2 games in, and one of my receivers said, Coach, he said, you got to get some ink like this. I'm like, no, dude, I'll tell you what, if we win a championship, I will. And I'm like, dude, we had no chance. That was my view. Oh, we go and stink and win the championship. And so, hey, you know what that is?
What is it?
Victory play, drawing up, baby. I've gone to a whole crazy another level.
The things we will do as coaches.
Yeah, that's the truth. Yeah.
That's awesome, Coach. Man, thank you for sharing those truths to us and your time there. And, man, coaches, here's the time where we got to get back in the game. This challenge, as Bill was talking, I had like 3 things wrote down here, but as Bill was talking, man, I looked at my life and, man, he talked about bitterness, holding you back, and bitterness can control you as well as a coach. And I remember 2 situations in my life, and I didn't know how freeing grace was, or giving someone grace. And I named my middle daughter, her middle name is Grace, and it's unmerited favor from God. And this coach, man, I love the guy, but I hated him all in the same breath. And I didn't really feel like there was something that we agreed on ever. But he's a great motivator and all this type of stuff. People loved him. But internally, I had so much bitterness toward this guy. And it haunted me for about 10 years until I was on stage one time and, speaking, and this guy beside me said, there's somebody in your life that you need to text right now or call right now and tell them that you've held in bitterness or you need to forgive them in your life. And I knew exactly who that person was. And until I did that, it took 10 years for me to truly forgive this person for actions. And until I did that, I really couldn't coach the way I wanted to coach. I always held in some things that I hated about him. And it struck me. And then whenever I text the person, they didn't even know that I had a problem with them. And it kind of helped both of us, because it was like we couldn't both have a relationship with each other, because we're kind of like, God didn't open that relationship to be as fruit. And so my challenge to you this week is, every coach, when I'm saying this, you got somebody in your life that you need to forgive, or tell them that you forgive them, or even just tell them that you love them. And whatever our issues was in the past, today is a new day, and God is going to challenge you to tell them that. And whoever that person is, man, I challenge you to go do it. Like I said, it held me in bondage of bitterness for 10 years, and I couldn't be the coach that I wanted to be because of that. And once I did that, I really understand what forgiveness and grace was. It helped me out in my relationship with my dad, my relationship with other coaches I really didn't like, and coaches that coached me that kind of I felt was too hard, but whatever. And I gave up that. I gave up the bitterness. So if you could share that to that person, do it. But here's the second challenge. I want you to share with the hashtag FCA Timeout something that you learned today that you can share with another coach on your staff and on social media. So use the FCA Timeout hashtag on social media, but also I want you to share something that you learned today with someone on your staff. Because if it never gets further than what we listen to on Zoom and what we talk about today, it's going to always stay just with that person. We want this to spread worldwide through the coaching profession. So thank you for sharing that. Now we go down to the sidelines. Chris Kaiser, it's your time.
Hey, Kenyatta, thank you so much, man. What a great message. What a great challenge. Coach Bill, you challenged me in a way today when you brought the input on the forgiveness and bitterness and how we overcome that. It reminded me we can't do that by ourselves. We can't do that on our own. And the only way we can really, truly forgive and overcome bitterness is through Jesus Christ, and that we have to have him along our side. And one of the things that we're so passionate about is having a walking, real relationship with Jesus. And we want you to know through FCA that we want everybody that's tuned in to understand that to its fullest. And we do that through a thing called, we explain it in a simple term through a thing called FCA 4. And really, it is 4 icons that help us explain this relationship, simple truths to this relationship with God. And the first one icon is the heart. And the heart basically tells us or challenges that God loves you, that God has great plans for you, has created you, and that he loves you so dearly. But there's a problem that comes along, and that is, the next symbol is the division sign, and that sin separates you. Sin separates us from that loving relationship with God. But there's an answer, there's a cure, there's a hope. It was explained to me back when I was in junior high and high school, that there was a chasm that we couldn't cross ourselves. Our good works didn't get us there. Our good deeds didn't help us, but Christ came to save us, and that Jesus rescues you. And that's what the cross represents, that Jesus rescues you, and that he has provided a way for us to step back and have that relationship again with God. And the final icon, the final symbol, is that question mark, and it implies to all of us that we have to answer that question. Will you allow Jesus into your heart? Will you trust Jesus to rescue you? And we all have to come to that. And to overcome this bitterness, to act on forgiveness, that we have to have Christ, and we can only do that through him. And so my challenge to you is, if you haven't done that, ask Christ into your life today. If you want to use that FCA 4, it's one of the greatest tools. It has been such a powerful opportunity for so many. And you can find that. But if you want more information on that, text GO FCA to 46322. That's how you get more information, and you'll get discipleship material and resources from us that you won't be doing this alone. Coach Blankenship, like I said, you challenged me today just in your message. I remember a time just a few years ago that I was betrayed by a friend. I was betrayed in one of the hardest situations that it struck me that, and I was having a tough time forgiving him. And I was going through a mentoring group, a discipleship group with a pastor in West Tulsa, Brent Kellogg. And Brent knew that I was struggling. And he asked me about forgiving this guy. And he said, "Are you doing that? Are you making that a priority?" And for weeks, I would come to that discipleship group and say no. And he said, "Kais," he said, and he mentioned this guy, my friend by name. He said, that forgiveness has become a real person, a real face to you. I want to challenge you to go see him. And it took me weeks, but I stepped up and went and asked for forgiveness and offered forgiveness and prayed with that guy. But it was one of the hardest things that I've ever done. I want to ask you, in your sabbatical tour, you went to several places, went to see several coaches and friends, and you talked about your takeaways, and you self-evaluated. You looked at yourself, and is there anything specific that you could recommend to people or any of our coaches today that are walking through a tough time like that you took away, that you grabbed onto, that you could share now after the fact?
Well, I think I shared a lot of the personal stuff with you already, in terms of, having to deal with my own issues. But I also learned a lot. I remember being at Southern Miss, and Coach Munkin had made things really easy for me. But I remember right before a team meeting, they were getting ready to have a specific emphasis in practice. It's going to be 4-minute drill, how to run the clock out, all those kind of things. So both on offense and defense. Well, he showed NFL video of guys doing it right and guys doing it wrong. And as soon as he put NFL video up, every guy in that room leaned forward and started watching. Well, I started figuring out, that's where they all want to be. So as much as I can, I try to get college video to show my guys of, this situation, this play, whatever. We've been struggling this year with getting our guys to not clip, to not hit in the back kicking situations and how you see some of them run past and throw their arms up and kind of do the basketball screen. Well, I found a punt return from the University of Miami, and 3 guys had done that, and it was so amazing. After I showed that to our guys, the next week in a game, we actually had guys trying to do it. They didn't do it great,
Right.
but it was awesome. And I think that sometimes we got to understand that we're not the expert always in our guys' eyes. That if we can bring in resources of people they want to be or places they want to go, sometimes that speaks to our guys even more.
Absolutely. That's good stuff. I learned something today about your tattoo. I love the victory formation, Coach.
Well, I had to put something up. Hey, greatest playing football.
That is classic. You mentioned in your testimony about going through the bitterness stuff that there was a coach that offended you. And did you ever tell him how you felt? Did you ever cross the bridge there that, when you talked to him about blessing him?
Yeah. I'm glad you asked me that, because I don't think he knew.
Right.
And I think there's times that you don't have to ask a person to forgive you if they don't have an offense. Right. I think sometimes you might open up another can. So the whole issue was me, man. I had to get to the forgiveness place. Sure. It wasn't about Coach. I mean, he was doing his job. He was doing what he thought was best for our team. I needed to build that relationship. And so I built that relationship with him by doing those 3 or 4 steps. Sure. You got to bless them. You got to learn to pray for them. You got to do good for them. And if you'll do those things, then it'll build that relationship back. I didn't need to go say, hey, Coach, please forgive me for my hateful attitude. He would have looked at me like, what? Yeah. He didn't know.
Well, like you learned and we learned, it's more for you. It's more for us. And that servant's heart is more for us sometimes.
Now, I do think, guys, if I've offended you and you're offended, I need to go to you. So I want to make sure you understand it. If you know it, I think we need to deal with that face to face. But there are sometimes the issue is what I feel or what I think. And sometimes when we open up that can, that might not help things. It might make things worse. So we just need to have some discernment, I think, about whether or not that person knows we got a problem.
Man, that's great. That's powerful. Thanks for sharing that.
Thanks for asking, man.
Back to you.
Coaches, thank you for tuning in today. Remember that it'll be on YouTube later on, and we'll get that link sent out. I've had coaches tell me they get to watch the YouTube, not necessarily get to tune in with us directly. So that's been great. So leading into next week and, hearing about the victory formation tattoo, it just makes me think about one of my favorite verses, and it's Romans 8:28. And basically it talks about, God calling us to a purpose and everything working together for good. And I'll think about that verse, and I think about the coach's heart has to be right before we can capture the heart of the athletes. And so coaches, man, it's critical for us to have our hearts right, because after we come out of this timeout, those athletes are going to be wanting to gravitate toward instruction, discipline, love, all of those things that we give them as coaches. But we got to have our heart right so we can capture the hearts of athletes. And so next week, obviously, we'll be probably talking about that victory formation and what true victory of a coach is, and the hearts of our athletes. So thank you guys for tuning in. Share the links with your friends and coaches in the coaching world. And it just doesn't have to be a coach, administrators, anyone in our profession that are capturing the hearts of this generation and the generations to come, and the people that we surround ourselves with. Share it with